I will now call this meeting to order. Okay, so do I have a motion to approve the agenda? By Councillor Bohm, seconded by Councillor Asanic. And any additions, subtractions, deletions? Seeing none, all those in favor of the agenda, that passes. Confirmation of the minutes of July 4th, 2018. Moved by Councillor Schell, seconded by Councillor Stroud. Anybody, any comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Thank you. Disclosure of pecuniary interest. Seeing none, no delegations, no briefings, I don't think, no. And so item 7, business, part A, update Kingston commemoration policy. You're not here for that? Where's that cultural services department when you need them? We're leaving the parks guys out to dry here. Oh, well. Switch them around. Are you expecting someone?
I'm not sure, but I can see if Paul's around.
That's a good idea. Okay, so the clerk suggested switching the items around. I guess we need a motion to do that. Councillor Bohm, Councillor Schell, to reverse the order of the agenda so that number 7B becomes 7A. The rest follows logically, I expect. And item A becomes item B.
Yep.
So, all right, starting with community outdoor rinks. That's on page 23. There's a proposal there. Does anyone have any comments? Councillor Stroud?
Can I ask a question? We're talking about the rinks, right?
Does Neil want to introduce?
Oh, did you want to speak to the rinks? Oh,
Yeah,
good.
go ahead and give the introduction,
Okay.
and then I'll have a
I
question.
would have asked you, but I thought you were maybe here for something. Okay. Usually you're here for much grander things, so. Okay. Mr. Unworth, please speak to community rinks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The outdoor rink policy covers currently 3 types of outdoor rinks. One are the city-run rinks that have staff located in them all winter long. Secondly, it covers the city-operated rinks that are satellite rinks. Essentially, they have no staff located at them. And it also covers community-run rinks, or otherwise known in the policy as community rinks. So this policy was drafted a number of years ago, and we included the provision of these community-led rinks to try and find a way to increase the number of skating rinks in parks without having to burden the sort of taxpayer with a lot of extra staff costs to run them. We found that one community group came forward and took over one of the former community-run rinks. It had a water service in place, fairly well set up. That's located in Compton Park near Mack Street. We've had about one community group come forward every year. The reality is that, or the habit, I guess, is that people see the cool weather and come forward for a community rink. And of course, in the policy to date, we require that they have to be furnished with a water service. A water service takes a long time to develop. So of course, and the policy was very clear, the former policy was very clear that if you came forward, there was a lead time, it was a deadline, it was far in advance of the construction of the season. But inevitably, people think about rinks when it gets cool. They don't think about them in the summer, they don't think about them the year before. So the policy wasn't really helping us get these folks in the parks. The reality of building water hydrants in parks hasn't gotten any faster, so we've came up with a couple of other methods that this policy includes that might allow for those inevitable last-minute requests. to be more easily accommodated. So one is this provision. There's a provision in the policy that allows for water truck services to be permitted in public parks, and also private water use in public parks. One of the old community-run rinks actually just had an area that flooded on the grass. It wasn't a storm pond, so it was safe, but it just had poor drainage. So this policy would permit that as well, whereas the former policy would require a proper hose. The reason for that was so that there would be some reliability of adequate water supply, but of course, the lead time of, by the time the season ran out and the hydrant was installed the following season, the community groups had typically lost interest or otherwise. So we've opened up the opportunity for that. In addition, a lot of community parks don't have room for a traditional rink that you can play hockey on. They're too loud, they're too noisy, they're full of all sorts of activities that are challenging if they're in small parks or in parks that don't have good street frontage. So a lot of folks would come forward and say, well, we just want our kid to play like in a little informal skating. And there was no provision for that in the formal policy. So this policy provides for two types of community rinks, one that's small, that has no hockey permitted. And those ones we can squeeze into lower areas of the parks and behind little trees, and people can flow easily from their homes if they want to use their own water service. So that type of rink we think will help a lot with the sort of scale of the exercise of trying to find out for a suitable rink. We had a lot of pushback from residents when people were proposing rinks that had hockey boards and would permit that kind of noise to occur and that kind of activity to occur very close to their homes. So a lot of folks, again, lost interest. The other issue is that we also have to find a way to provide service in cases of big snowstorm, and they just can't clear the rinks themselves. So sometimes our public works department in the old policy would go in and plow them off. And of course, in most locations, that's impossible to get a vehicle into a park in the middle of the winter. So again, this other provision for a community rink was put in place to have these sort of smaller little satellite ones. The only last issue was that there has been some pushback over the costs of some of the administration, including insurance and things like that. And we've added, and that's only $300 a year, but when we wrote the policy a number of years ago, there was no city insurance at all. So you'd have to call up an insurance broker and say, can I have insurance to run a rink? And the price they would get would be anywhere from $200 to $7,000. The insurers didn't know how to deal with it at all. It was very specialized, and nobody in town could understand how to insure a community group for a rink. So last year, the city took the initiative at staff direction to just find an insurance policy under one of our carriers for events and customize it. So now we have that in place. It's $300. The community groups have paid that in the past. There is the obvious argument that folks would say, well, I'm building a rink for the community to use, and I'm putting the sweat labor in, the sweat equity they'd call that, so why should I pay anything? So under this policy, and there's not a change in the policy, but we are talking about potentially finding a way to help compensate for some of that. And again, it's budget dependent. But the core issues fundamentally are the sort of, if you will, the bureaucracy of the community rinks has been frustrating to staff, because staff are obliged to follow the policies, and then the community groups get upset. And we have no choice but to follow our council direction. So we're trying to thin out the bureaucracy out of the policy, but still have some controls. I guess maybe there's only one other minor mention, and that's with regards to the requirement to with the community, like a community garden. So we had that occurring in the past when people would come forward with community rink proposals, and the neighbors in some cases would come out in full force and support, and in some cases there was complete public outcry. I don't want a rink near my home, I don't like them, they're too noisy, they'll keep my kids up all night long, et cetera, and there was conflict in the neighborhood. Now when you're building a community garden, that's going to be there for decades, typically, you want to have that public conversation. But because of our weather and because of the sort of nature of the dad who wants to flood the rink until his kid grows up 2 years later and then he loses interest. The reality is our community rinks are not lasting efforts. So we're reducing that responsibility to consult with the public. The city's just going to put a sign up that says, this is the proposed home of a community run rink. You got any problems, call the community rink guy. And that will alleviate that tension, hopefully, between neighbors. Now, if we do find there's challenges, we'll have to cancel them or restrict them. But the consultation effort will be borne by the city instead of by the volunteers. So that's it. Just trying to make it easier for people to do these sort of pro bono projects for us. Thanks.
Councillor.
Thanks, Mr. Unsworth. That was great. Added a little bit more context to what's in the report. One of the items that I'm sure that we're all interested in is the clause about insurance. So you were explaining that about the $300. This is likely, I'm guessing, the cost of adding like a rider or an extra clause in the city insurance to carry that particular rink. And it would be per community rink and by the community members who are also already volunteers. And I'm just wondering, because we've typically have one or maybe two of these come up every year, and it's a great idea, by the way, to have it be the same year. That's the main sort of bonus of this policy as I see it. I'm just wondering if it's even, if we can consider, you were saying there would be ways to maybe, is there any way we basically could add a clause about how maybe if the community group is not able to raise that $300, that there is a process that you can apply for a grant for the $300 or for partial coverage of the $300? Because I think some of these neighborhood rinks, that might actually be a barrier for them happening. And for the cost of dollars, I don't see why we would want that. I think there should be more flexibility to have that insurance cost borne by the city, and I'm wondering what you think about that.
Yes, so in the policy, we included a clause that refers to that, absolutely. And we have it in our budget for 2019. We have a budget portion of the budget set aside in case we get any of these requests coming forward. Right now, we don't have any on the books that are coming forward, but we think the Compton one will come back, so that's good. The insurance itself is actually not to cover the city. It's actually not a city liability. The rinks, if they're run according, there's a manual on how to flood, and the public works team inspects them and makes sure they're not all scaly and prone to people, hurting themselves on them. So the actual liability to the public at large and to the city as a corporation is already covered by our very, very large insurance policies. It's actually to cover the people who are flooding the rinks. In these volunteer circumstances, if someone falls and hurts themselves, or someone is participating, and then they will be co-litigated against. And the volunteers, if they don't have insurance, it's their homes that are vulnerable, it's their livelihoods, it's their cost to pay with the city for those costs. So it's actually there to protect the volunteers. And yes, absolutely, we have and the line item, I'll find it if you give me a moment. There is a line item. It's farther in.
I say the line, it's the next one after it says insurance says cost on page 26, page 4 of the report. The proposed policy amendment permits that the city may provide additional support subject to available resources or funding.
So we have that budget in place for 2019. And we, just to give a comfort level of how we do that normally, we have a budget, I don't know if it's $5,000 or $6,000 a year that we put for community gardens. And the first line item that goes when they put their requests in is for insurance, because I think they pay $300 to $600 for insurance as well. Same thing, same issues to protect the garden organizers. Yeah, so the funding's in place for that. Thanks.
Okay, so just to be completely clear, that $300 that quoted in the previous clause is a $300 that it will cost the city? Is that what you're saying?
So if If we get a budget approved that includes that function, and it's not just for insurance, but also there's other issues, there's other costs that the community groups will bear, that if we have some funding, we'll be able to open up over time. There's different things like rink building equipment. There's more than just insurance that is a cost, including supply of water, water trucks, that sort of thing. So depending upon the scale of the budget that we set and that approval, we may be able to fund all of it, or we may be able to fund some of it, and it would be administered the same way the community garden policy is, first come, first served basis. But from what I've been informed, assuming the budget's approved and for the 2019 cycle, is that there would be adequate funding to cover any of those costs for the community groups. The expected exposure to the city is probably, at this point, zero, because nobody has got an application in, but it could be one group at $300 and no extra equipment. It's hard to say at this point. We do with the community garden grant, we monitor it, and every year, if it looks like there's another one planted, we grow the grant a little bit, yeah. And that grant policy is the same as this. It says that the city may, it doesn't say the city shall. So we copied that.
Okay. Because we're passing this particular exhibit as, which would become policy for the rinks, I think it would be better if that was actually spelled out in, that it's an identical process as the community gardens existing policy or something. That should be in this language. It's great for you to give me that assurance here verbally, but if it's not in the policy, it's not in the policy, right? Yeah. Like, I mean, for writing policy, it should be, I think it should be in here. I don't know what my committee members think, but it's what's in black and white that matters.
It's not laid out like that in the community garden policy. The policy just talks about how to build the gardens and what everyone's responsibilities are. There were staff report to council, well, to committee, I guess, back in the day, it sort of went about it the same way. It said that the city would establish, the rec department would establish, and that grant, may cover those costs subject to budget approval. So my direction is to, from my end, is to follow sort of that similar format, but to date, we haven't actually seen that be a core issue to date. The only community garden group that's ever actually in 4 years that's ever actually taken on one of these rinks has paid the insurance. I guess this would be a bit of a windfall for them, because they don't have to pay it if they sign up next year.
Okay, so it needs to be flexible, because we're not sure whether or not the community groups will find the cost to be a barrier, and I'll just leave it at that. And that's all I was going to ask you about. Thank you.
Councillor Bohm.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you. Excuse me. Just a quick question, because I know I had some conversations about Molly McGlynn Park, and on here it has that it'll be end boards only, but it's going to be changed to full boards, I believe. And then I know they were looking at putting a water service in as well at some point there, possibly this year. So what does it take to, would that just be an update on the Schedule A, or, because this is the actual policy, right? So I'm just wondering, would that be something that would just automatically happen, or does it need to actually be in this document?
So it's a good catch. We thought about it when we talked to you about the Molly McGlynn full boards. The first place we looked was in the body of the policy, and neither the staffed nor the unstaffed rinks specifically talk about the type of boards. It just says that boards will be provided. The exhibit in the back is a bit dated. You'll also note that Ken Matthews Park is a park that is community led, and we never know that until the day of the year. So there is some flexibility in the body, but certainly the right time most likely to make those updates is probably at a major, if we add a major new public run facility, if we add a major change to the policy again.
So it really doesn't matter that it's not in here, I guess.
You're going to get the full boards this year,
perfect.
and the hydrant is being installed, whether it's used for the the flooding, or whether there's a water truck as well, and they just subsidizes the flooding, in between water truck services. That'll be up to Public Works to determine. But no, all that project is going forward. The body of the exhibit, good catch on the exhibit, but the body actually, we did look to make sure that the end boards weren't specifically outlined in as a function. Otherwise, we would have tried to amend that too.
Awesome. Thank you.
Councillor Stanek.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you. I just have a question, Mr. Unsworth. So for Woodbine Park, the renovations, someone asked me last night if the community rink will still be in the same spot, or where will it be? So since you're here, that saves me an email, and we're talking about rinks. Thanks.
Yeah, for sure. So that is a fully staffed city-run facility, not a that's terminology, we call them community run rinks, or it's a bit of a missed terminology, but it's not moving. So we did talk about moving it around the parking lot area to improve its efficiencies and circulation in the off-season, but it's got lights where it is right now, and it's functioning well. It's flat. It's very flat right there, so that helps a lot. Yeah, so no, not moving. No.
Any other comments? We'll now go to the public. Any comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks to Mr. Unsworth for the report. I think it's really excellent work. And I do have a few things which I'd like to add as suggestions and some questions. So, big outdoor rink person as a kid growing up, and I think for people who don't have money, getting to go and recreate there is really important, right? So, I'm really impressed. I didn't know we had this many. So I have one suggestion with your chart. So on page 36, really good information. Could those be itemized by district? With my goal being that each district would have at least one of the 12 districts we have. So I don't know if that's the case. I know some of them and what districts they're in. So that's one question. My next question is this information on the city's website anywhere in an organized way? And also we would like to see the rinks located by their exact addresses. It's on so-and-so street at so-and-so number. I know you know all that, but the average person doesn't necessarily know all that. Just start getting the word out there so they know and they can use them more. I do want to point out one, say, the way it's supposed to be versus the way it is. Springer Market Square doesn't allow pickup hockey, but I've seen pickup hockey played out there, in the evenings many times. So you've got a situation which is not the reality of what you're trying to make happen. I was just wondering if you're going to enforce that or whatever. Obviously, it takes people to watch it. My big, I guess my suggestion as a new thing, there's a Bell Park working group going on for the last several years, and that's a very large area. It does have water as well in certain locations on it. And it's been a winter recreation center in the past. You got a clubhouse there with washrooms and so forth. So it's something of a trendy thing to have outdoor hockey tournaments now. And that might be a location to look at for that in terms of the sports tourism being developed there. You got a large area, and it's not really being used for anything else at that time. And I guess my last question is, you've got some Zambonis in service for certain rinks. And I'm wondering if those machines could possibly travel more than they're doing now and create a better service situation across the suite of 18 rinks that you're currently operating. So thank you.
Mr. Unsworth?
I think I got that all
Anyone
through,
else? No.
through the chair. Yes, all the information on the website. It's called Outdoor Rinks. Google it, City of Kingston Outdoor Rinks, and this policy is on there. We'll update the policy if it's approved by council. Yes, I like the idea of adding addresses to the park locations in case people don't know where the parks are. That's a great idea. Thank you. Everyone seems to type it into their iPhone these days rather than knowing where the actual park is. So great idea. We'll do that. As far as Bell Park goes, we'll let that process follow its course. There are some challenges with adding extra water load to the surface of that material, but certainly all the parks are potentially open for community rink building. Hockey on the square is enforced. We're very lucky to have commissionaires on site all the time. So if anyone wants to play hockey and break the bylaw after 10 p.m., they can see what happens. But certainly it's enforced. Sometimes you can get away with it for a little bit, but it's probably one of the most heavily enforced locations in the city. So we just do it to keep safe. We don't want the pucks damaging the architecture or any passersby. The Zamboni use is, they have two types of Zambonis. They have the big one and then they have a tractor mount that goes on the back, and they're both very hard to transport because of the weight and the water, and they actually will freeze if they go out of the shed for too long. So they're actually a bit challenging to move those, so I would have to defer to Public Works friends who maintain all the rinks out there, but typically they're only located in those prime areas where there's staff, like in here at the city hall, there's a building that's heated that keeps the Zamboni from freezing up. It doesn't take long for that Zamboni knife to turn to a solid block of ice if it's not in a warm building, even 10 minutes on the road. As far as service level distribution by district, I'm always cautious how I answer this, but geographically the rinks exist where the rinks exist right now. And they are shown in a map that is on the website, and the distribution geographically for residents, regardless of what district they live in, equitable. There's one in each of the far east and west ends of the city, and then there's more as you go towards the core, and that distribution is a bit historic. But thank you for the comment on that identification of district service level versus geographic service level. Thank you.
Now we'll come back to the committee. Does anyone want to make the motion? Councillor Stroud, seconder. Councillor Shell. Any comments by anyone? I've got a couple of specific comments, and that is that just that Mr. Unsworth can take them on McBurney Park, and that is that noise continues to be a problem from time to time because people turn up to play hockey at 2 a.m. in the morning, and that means you have to call the police, which isn't exactly at the top of their list, I suspect. And the other thing is the signage saying you cannot play hockey after 9 p.m., I presume, is inadequate. You look around for it, you really have to look for it. There might be a small one on the outbuilding, but that's it. Maybe something more prominent would be. And so I just wanted to bring that up. And I take it that at 9 p.m. all the lights go off. And perhaps you can just tell me that. And so there must be playing by streetlight. That's all I could think. Does that sound right to you?
So I don't know the answer to the light timing, but I'll find out and we'll follow up with all the members of the committee. As far as the signage on restrictions of time after 9, typically that follows the noise bylaw, which is a 9 o'clock curfew as well. As far as this actual sort of prominence of the signage at location or others, happy to work with our Public Works Department to do a little better for sure. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. All right. Any other comments? No? Okay, the motion is on the floor. All those in favor? None opposed, so that carries. Now, what was, what? Do you want to continue? What? Okay,
I'm not certain he's on ring.
yeah, I know, I'm gonna tell them that. Okay, so the information is that the Director of Cultural Services is or was tied up in a meeting at the TET Center. I asked him if he could be here in 10 minutes. We haven't heard back. So I would suggest that we proceed with 7C, which probably won't even take 10 minutes. It'll probably take 3 minutes. And then we'll come back to commemoration policy. Okay? That's okay? All right? Take that as a friendly amendment? Okay, so 7, I guess it's B anyway. Yeah. 7B, report Arts Advisory Committee. So this is the Arts Advisory Committee recommends as follows from the Arts Advisory Committee meeting on July 12th, 2018. Part I, Part 1, appointments to the Poet Laureate Working Group. That Helen Humphreys, Marilyn Simmons, and Sarah be appointed as members of the public to the Poet Laureate Working Group with a term expiring November 30th, 2018. Any comments? Okay, so this is all those in favor? Stroud? Yeah, that's what I'm saying. He's moved by Councillor Stroud and second by Councillor Shell. Come on, guys. All those in favor? Okay. Nobody took the bait. We had to waste like 9 more minutes there. Can you? We could take a small break.
He's on his way.
Yeah, but we'll be done this thing by the time he gets here. The, go ahead.
I would like to just ask if any members of the committee have questions for the cultural director, and for us. So should we hold the committee for him, just as a formality, because the report kind of speaks for itself. So I was going to ask. I don't have any questions. I personally don't have any questions.
Fair enough. Let's pass it. I know where your guys are coming from. Anyway, the right. You're right. I don't know. Forever is a very long time. That's what your wife says, right? So, okay, we have a recommendation. We have to hear from the public too, right? Okay. There's no comments from the committee. Oh, Councillor Stroud.
I think just for the record, I'll read the most relevant paragraph because this is recorded, and then any members watching online or at home, any members of the community will know what the report says if they haven't read it. This report is available on the city website under, of course, this committee's agenda piece. So it says, an update regarding the potential creation of a Valor District that was first proposed in 2015 but deferred by council until the commemoration strategy and the commemorations policy were in place, and there's a report there that you can also link to. And staff had the opportunity to assess the proposal against other corporate priorities. The purpose of that proposal was to designate an area spanning from the Armories to Fort Frontenac as a Valor District to commemorate the military service of past Kingston residents. City staff, including members of the ICG, have since assessed this proposal against criteria set out in the commemoration policy, as well as in relation to another corporate priority, which is the creation of the North Kingstown Secondary Plan. So then it goes on to say how the secondary plan...
Is this a question?
No, this is for the record.
Well, that comes later.
We can't, it's the same thing that happens when there's a presentation and there's questions, is that we're considering the report, and I'm reading what the important part of the report before we vote on the recommendation.
I get. Well, there's other parts, but that's one.
So then the secondary plan has a cultural heritage study that has identified a rich, multi-layered history of the area that spans from pre-contact times through the 20th century. As a result, the potential exists for a more diverse range of stories to be highlighted. and it is the opinion of staff that a Valor District not be created as it may compete with the larger goals of the North Kingstown Secondary Plan. I just want to highlight that it is the opinion of staff. Okay, that it is subject to a rigorous public consultation process and that is still pending completion. So essentially the North Kingstown Secondary Plan will take care of this in a larger picture, and that prioritizing the Valor District is not recommended. That's what it says in the report, and there's recommendation to that effect. For the record, thank you.
You could have ended that with a rising vocal tone, so it sounded like one big, long question. Okay, that was fair enough. I appreciate what the councillor did there. And I'll add something when we get to the proper place in the meeting. With no other comments by the committee, so we go to the public.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I think what Councillor Stroud said has a lot of merit, and I'm also going to praise the report. It's been carefully thought through. There's no question about that. There's been a lot of thought put into it and a lot of time and diverse opinions sought. Just someone who is interested in history and its context, I'm a little bit, I guess, confused as to how to make a historical commemoration actually happen. If I have an idea how to do that, maybe something of a user guide might be valuable. I haven't really come across that. And I do think the Valor District idea has merit, but the context is important, right? So I think that staff has that right, and it's a concept that could be revisited as we go forward. So thank you.
Thank you. Now the comes back to the committee. I'll read the motion, the recommendation rather, that says that the Arts, Recreation, Community Policy Committee recommend that Council approve the amendments to the Kingston Commemorative Policy, Poll 37, as proposed in Exhibit A, attached to report number ARC 18005, and that the Arts, Recreation, and Community Policies Committee recommend Council direct staff not to proceed with creating a Valor District within Kingston so that a broader range of Kingston stories may be highlighted and shared as part of the development of future implementation of the North Kingstown Secondary Plan. So that's a quick version of what Councillor Stroud said there. Any comments from the questions from the committee? Okay. We need a mover. Actually, we have to get it on there. Councillor Sanik, second by Councillor Stroud. Now, is there any comments? Councillor Stroud.
I think for the purpose of this particular recommendation, there's not much more to say because it's in the report. But in general, I would like to see more public consultation by the Cultural Department on matters of commemoration. And there is an ongoing engagement policy and engagement structure in place that's actually live right now about the stories of Kingston. It's on the website. Members of the public can weigh in on any Kingstonian from the past that they think should be commemorated. There's also, if you want to say anything about Sir John MacDonald, for example, that's the place to do that. And there's a lot already ongoing, and that the commemoration strategy is sort of a live document. So it comes up at the Heritage Committee as well. And I would just say that what's needed is more input from Kingstonians. And I mean, we have one member of the public here tonight, but I would just say that I would encourage the Cultural Department to read more strenuously to collect those voices and to identify those stories that they mention in vague terms in this report, you know, that there's a more diverse range of stories. Well, we need to go get those stories. So I know Swamp Ward, for example, has a great stories project ongoing. There's lots of sources for that material, and I would really encourage them to go outside of the bureaucracy to find that material, and members of the public, Queen's University, professors of history, historians, historical society, et cetera, et cetera. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other? Councillor Bone.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you, I just want to echo what Councillor Stroud said. We do hear from a very dedicated group of people quite consistently, but I think the thing we need to do here is actually find a way to engage the broader community and hear from a cross-section and actually get everybody's stories kind of involved. So I think that's a very important comment to make, and just wanted to reinforce that and thank Stroud to bring it up. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, I'll just say something along the same lines about I've been involved in North Kingstown secondary plan group, and there's a lot of history being almost discovered. People know it, and there's a culture up there, but it has not been recognized formally as much as it could be. There's a lot of work being done on the Swamp Board, which is part of North Kingstown, not all of it, and the Inner Harbor. And there's lots of stories about industry, native or indigenous history, and different ethnic groups, okay? And just working class life in North Kingstown. And so I think it's reasonable to want to integrate that into the military history that we have, that we're all interested in, because it's worthwhile. So I think what staff's asking for is that the North Kingstown secondary plan is not done. There's a lot of work to be done, even when the report comes in, which I believe will be Q2 next year, somewhere in there. And so they're just saying, don't make any decisions right now. So I don't have anything else to say, so if anybody else does, I don't see that. So all those in favor of the motion, it passes, and that's passes, and we'll go on to the next item, which is, we did them all. So we're on item 8, no motions, notice of motion, none, 10, other business, none, 11, correspondence, none. Date and time of the next meeting, November 22nd, 2018. I guess that will be the last meeting for some of us. Some of us we know, some of us we don't. And 13 is adjournment. It's moving between, come out with Councillor Schell and Councillor Bohm. Somehow that seems, apropos. That passes, so thank you very much.